Good evening. Welcome to this Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me remind commissioners to speak into the microphone, make sure it's lighted green for the record. And, oh, Mr. Gress, I have no cheat sheets tonight. I'll have to ad-lib it.
I apologize, sir.
That's all right, you're forgiven. We shall call roll in some kind of a strange order. Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Present.
Commissioner Bowie.
Present.
Commissioner Ackland. Mayor Turnbow. Commissioner Peterman.
Present.
Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
And Commissioner Faulkner is present. So let's see if I got everybody. That would be 7 of us. All right, thank you. No personal appearances scheduled this evening. One item on consent agenda, approval of minutes from our August 20th, 2019 meeting. And as you wish, I would either entertain a motion to accept consent agenda or accept minutes of our August 20th, 2019 meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the minute meetings.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Commissioner Bowie, second by Commissioner Fizer to accept minutes, I think that was.
Yep.
All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 6 in favor. Any opposed and abstaining? Commissioner Urquia. Nothing this evening in unfinished business. Moves us along rather quickly to case 19020, the fiscal year 2020 through 2024 capital improvement program. This case will require a public hearing, and I don't know, Mr. Gress, shall we start with you first for introduction?
Yes, sir. I will forward it right over to our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Mike Eakey, to make a presentation on this case.
All right, thank you. Mr. Eakey.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. I want to thank Chairman Faulkner and the entire Planning and Zoning Commission for allowing us the opportunity to present the 2020-2024 capital improvement budget for your consideration tonight. While the projects contained within the capital improvement project do forecast out to 2024, I think what's really of interest and what we'll dive into very quickly here tonight are the projects that we're going to see in the fiscal year 2020 budget that have been submitted to the City Council. Just as a little bit of background, if you've not gone through the CIP process in the past, the projects that are contained within the CIP are developed and recommended by staff through a CIP committee, and this includes myself, Public Works Director Mike Krass, Community or Development Services Director Jim Cataret, Police Chief Jan Zimmerman, as well as our IT Manager James Mayberry, and various other folks from around the city that provide input, do a lot of the research, and give us the background information that we can put together the 30 or so projects that we have presented here tonight for your recommendation. So getting into the individual funds, under the Building and Equipment Replacement Program, which focuses on city-owned properties such as City Hall and the facilities themselves, we're looking at replacing the facility duress and fire system. This is essentially an electronic button system. Previously, we had an emergency duress button where if someone at the dais, someone at the front desk, or someone at the water utility window pressed this button, it alerted the dispatch downstairs in the police department that there was an emergency upstairs or somewhere else within City Hall. The only issue with that type of a system is it didn't indicate exactly where that button was being pressed, simply that that button was pressed and that we had an emergency somewhere in the building. While it was functional, since we had one building here at City Hall, now that we have Centerview just across the street, the Raymore Activity Center at Recreation Park, and a growing number of other facilities, it is necessary to have a facility duress button system that works and indicates that location. The other project within this is the City Hall and the Police Department parking lot repair. If you've noticed and ever driven in the back of City Hall in front of the dumpsters and the sally port used by the police department, the amount of truck traffic and heavy truck traffic back in that area has really torn up the asphalt that has been laid in that parking lot. What we're recommending through the CIP is to tear out that asphalt and replace that with a thicker concrete pad that's reinforced that can support the heavy truck traffic back there. At the same time, in that back area, we'll also be replacing the exterior doors. These are doors that are used by the police department for the temporary kennels here for the animal shelter, as well as some storage. Those doors are the original doors that came with the facility. They are in desperate need of some repair. Also looking at replacing the sidewalk and some of the curbing within the interior of the parking lot. The sidewalks this last winter really took a beating with some of the salt and shoveling that we did in the ice, and so we'd like to get those repaired for safety. And then the last item in this fund are the radiant heaters that will be installed at the Public Works facility. The Public Works facility has several large garage bays, and that is used, during the winter to house the snow plows and winter equipment. Every time they opened up those garage doors currently with the heating system they have, all of that hot air goes out into the exterior, and with the radiant heater, it allows us to heat the concrete pad as well as the air. So as you open those doors, some of the hot air gets out, you can close those doors, that heat doesn't all escape, and we can provide a little bit safer and a little bit more comfortable of a place for our Public Works employees to work. The next fund I'd like to focus on is the Transportation Fund. This is where you'll find the annual curb replacement program as well as the annual street preservation program. Both of those are being funded with curb replacement at $400,000 and the annual street preservation program at $800,000. As we have in previous years, we're also going to be combining this with our the stormwater sales tax, where you'll see the annual curb replacement also receiving another $300,000 for the replacement of that curb throughout the city. This is an increase from what it has been in the past, and so we'll be able to replace more curb throughout the city, hopefully as we identify more areas that need that replacement. Also going to see the right-of-way infrastructure repair project within the Transportation Fund at $150,000. If possible, if any of these right-of-way infrastructure repair projects that we identified come in lower than that $150,000 budget, we'll be able to use that money for even more curb repair, being that it'll be another concrete project that we could allocate some of those funds to. The Fox Ridge Sidewalk Project from Drake to Creekmore is a unique project that I want to spend a little bit of time on. This is a sidewalk project that we had originally partnered with the school district and identified a safe routes to schools area to which this sidewalk would allow children in that area to walk to Creekmore Elementary safely using that side of the street, the east side of the street, Fox Ridge Drive there. We were able to identify a grant that would help fund this project. It was a matching grant, so we are placing the funds for the project up front, and then we will be reimbursed as this project goes forward, and that project will be reimbursed through Mid-America Regional Council. Another partnership is the Operation Greenlight Camera Installation Project, also with Mid-America Regional Council. This would add 3 new cameras along streetlights going along 58 Highway. This will extend our ability to see all the way essentially to 58 Highway, or down 58 Highway to I-49 essentially. Currently, we don't quite have the ability to get over that last hill as you're traveling to the west, and so with the additional lights and the partnership with Operation Greenlight, this will be able to extend that functionality as well as give us a little more insight and more data into the traffic that flows along that commercial corridor. And then finally, the 58 Highway access modifications at Kentucky Road. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a future project in 2021-22. Moving down to the excise tax fund, this is the $200,000 for maintenance of thoroughfare routes. This is a regular project where we look at the thoroughfares throughout the city and conduct needed maintenance. We have a traffic study for North Cass Parkway. This is one that we are highlighting as it will be necessary as development occurs along North Cass Parkway and Dean Avenue. This study would specifically look at traffic as development would occur, through North Cass Parkway to Dean and Dean to Lucy Webb. And then we'll have a partnered traffic study further down in the CIP that's going to be looking at traffic along 58 Highway south to Lucy Webb, correct? As part of another traffic study when we're looking at the north side or the north commercial corridor. The turn lane at 58 Highway to Fox Ridge, as well as intersection improvements at 58 Highway and Fox Ridge. This has become necessary with the development at that corner, the commercial development there. This will be the inclusion of a right turn lane, as well as the medians on the south side of Fox Ridge, or south side on Fox Ridge, south of 58 Highway. So you'll have those safety improvements, as well as that additional turn lane for the flow of traffic. And then finally, the last one on there, as I said just a little while earlier, that partnership traffic study of 58 Highway and Dean. This is again going to be looking at traffic through our main commercial corridor, essentially from the far west city limit all the way to Mott Drive, and then we'll also be looking south along Dean to Lucy Webb to again provide us more insight and data and information that our engineers can use as we continue to plan out our traffic infrastructure. Looking at the Capital Improvement Fund, we have $13,000 set aside for the sidewalk gap program, and then $52,000 set aside for the concession door access system. This is a necessary security improvement for all of the concession stands in our parks. So this includes Memorial Park and Recreation Park, as well as within the Raymore Activity Center. Currently, we have to issue physical keys in order to access not only the concession areas, but also the bathrooms in order to lock those at night or to open them up for use. What this will create is much like here at City Hall, we'll have the magnetized doors that can be secured via computer, but we can also issue those identity cards or those RFID cards that can unlock those doors and allow access to staff, to the police department and others, and they become much easier to track who has those keys as well as who's entered or who's exited based on who has scanned and at what time. So a good security improvement that is necessary for those concession stands as they become busier. If at any point you have questions, feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I can continue to kind of move down through these projects. But like I said, I can sometimes get on a roll and just get focused on moving down. Into the Stormwater Sales Tax Fund, again, like I said, we have the annual curb replacement program at $300,000. The Silvertop Lane Bridge wing walls, and this takes kind of a mouthful. This was something that the state identified as an area during an inspection that needed replacement, so we are being required to make these repairs in order to ensure that the walls themselves don't fail, that they are part of the bridge that extends in that Silvertop Lane. And so that is a project that we will be taking on. And then the culvert replacement at Aspen and Olive and Jefferson. This is within original town. These are just the pipe culverts in order to replace those culverts to allow for better stormwater to flow in that area. And then the final project under the stormwater is a Crest Drive inlet replacement. This is an inlet that is, as we make the improvements to it, will allow for the water to flow. Currently, it is backing up into the street as well as into a resident's yard. And so with this larger inlet, we'll be able to move that water out of that area. Under the Park Sales Tax Fund, putting aside the Memorial Park Arboretum light replacement. You may remember this project coming before you last year as part of the CIP. During the year, the park board reallocated this money for lighting at Hawk Ridge Park and some other amenities. And so the park board would like to renew this project and place it back into the CIP to replace the lights that are currently at the Arboretum. This would really just purchase the lights. It would be our staff that would be installing those lights. The Recreation Park Playground replacement, this is for the smaller equipment for those children about age 5 to 12. The larger equipment. So this is the one that is situated more to the south on the playground area. The younger one, the toddler area, is in a little bit better shape, but it's the older playground equipment, the jungle gym equipment, that really needs to be replaced. Some areas, I believe, had already been closed off due to just the age of the playground itself. The next project is $25,000 for the Johnston Lake Fountain. This is an important project for water quality. It is not only a, kind of an aesthetic element to the lake to add the fountain with lighting that'll sit at the center of the lake, but it also aerates the lake, allows for better habitat for fish, but also helps keep down some of the moss and other items that grow in that lake as it continues to filter that water. The next item on here is the Recreation Park Trail Gap and Crosswalk. With the construction of the Raymore Activity Center and then the installation of a bridge just across from the parking lot, one of the areas we noticed that people still, especially on a very busy weekend at Recreation Park, one of the areas that we noticed visitors still walk through is the driveway from that bridge to Madison. And so this would install a walkway off of the traffic, off of the street, in order for people to walk to the continuation of the trail that runs along Madison from the new bridge that has been installed just by the Rec Park Pond. Next item under the park sales tax is the TB Hanna Park landscaping and earthwork. This is going to be the foundational work, the dirt work, and everything that's really going to lay the foundation for the next phase of projects, so that the inclusive spray ground, the playground, as well as every other item that's going to be out there at TB Hanna that was part of the GeoBond project. Moving down to the sewer connection fund, we have an upgrade to the SCADA system. This is an important piece of equipment that allows our public works folks to monitor the lift stations, the pumps, as well as the necessary equipment attached to our sewer and water system remotely. So if there's any problem, a pump fails, that system alerts them. This upgrade to the system will essentially bring us up into the 21st century and get us up to date with that computer system. The next project in the sewer connection fund is the Willow Wind sewer connection. Currently, as the Lofts project and the rest of the corner of 58 and Fox Ridge Drive develop, one of the necessary elements that we identified was a sewer connection that needed to occur under 58 Highway to the developable lots on near the Willow Wind shopping, or the current Willow Wind shopping center. This project will install an 8-inch sewer line that will allow for that. It's a necessary project that we look, from the city perspective, we view it as important to the health and safety to allow and build that sewer connection under 58 Highway and give folks that access to that sewer system. Under the Enterprise Capital Maintenance Fund, we have the annual sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration reduction program. This is a regularly scheduled program that has fluctuated year after year. And then finally, the hydrant replacement program. This is scheduled at around $144,000, is vital in ensuring that we have a working hydrant system throughout the city. This one currently contemplates replacing roughly 16 different hydrants that are in need of repair or valve replacement, and so that another important project. In total, we're looking at the 2019-2020 capital improvement program, roughly $4.4 million worth of improvements throughout the city from various funds that'll affect just about every department, come from a variety of areas and ideas from staff. But I think at the end of the day, we'll provide some of the much needed services and infrastructure that our residents have come to expect. I am welcome to any questions, and that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Mr. Ige, I know you didn't necessarily touch on some of the future unfunded items, so I didn't know if that would, if I had a couple of questions, if that would be okay with that. Just had a couple of things that kind of popped up I was curious about. You touched on the Fox Ridge Drive sidewalk from Creekmore Elementary North, but in here it was listed as, there is the Fox Ridge Drive sidewalk listed a total of $407,440 and identified as a all the way north to all the way south. I think Creekmore Pond Lane, I believe, is where I've heard conversations talk about. So on that one, obviously if we get the grant and we can do the north half, would that number here, the 407,000, then be reduced by 180 for future consideration? Sorry, that's totally a random thought there, but I know there's been talk about on that east side of the road, trying to connect from the south side of Creekmore essentially all the way to the north side for access to the school. So the item listed here in the future unfunded is 407,000. That would be the total project. But if we get to do the north half, which is 180, so then would that be the remaining balance, or do we think that we'd have more money that we could start the south portion, or?
And if I remember correctly, and I'll need to lean on Mr. Krass for this one, the future unfunded portion to the south unfortunately required a bit more engineering.
Yeah,
because of the pond
the creeks, the
crossings.
ponds, the retention basins.
And so that's why that project ended up landing in the unfunded. With this one, because we were able to get the match, and we were able to advance that, and we knew that was an area right near the school, that's really the reason that one kind of became and again, our partnership with the Safe Routes to Schools, that's how that project advanced to the 1920.
Okay.
Really, it was just the cost of that creek, or that, I say creek, I'm sorry, but the pond crossing.
Yeah, all
that
that.
unfortunately took it out to an unfunded project.
Okay, 'cause the reason I had asked that, because on the, which it's in our package is page 156, but in the total packet's page 138 of the document, it identifies from Creekmore Drive, the south, to Granada to the north. And so that's why I was curious, because here it identifies the entire length, but previously you guys had referenced the 180 for the portion to the north. So I didn't know if that needs to be revised, I guess, maybe, because if we're funding the north part, then really it would be from Creekmore Drive just to the south. Oh no, that does say Creekmore. I'm sorry, maybe it's the map. The map needs to be.
Okay, the map shows the whole.
It shows the whole line. Maybe that's where my confusion was. Okay, I'm sorry. And then I had a question about another one of the unfunded things on here was the need for a new water tower. And it had been identified at the corner of, well, at least on the map here, Kentucky and County Line Road. What is that existing structure that's there versus what would that, is that not technically a water tower?
We're not going to be able to hear you, Mike, unless you come up. Sorry.
Sorry.
Thanks, sir.
That's actually a ground reservoir. What we're looking at and contemplating is an elevated water tower to maintain pressure in the system. As the city grows, and if we approach about 35,000 people, we'll need about another 2 million gallons of storage. So that the location we're looking at is probably closer to Gore Road and Kurzweil. There's a ridge line there, and that's where our main connection points are.
Okay, because I was curious what the existing reservoir that you were. So thank you. That answered that question.
Quick question. Okay, thank you. Just as real quick. A lot of money on parks. Lots of money on parks. That jumped out at me that over the next 5 years or so, lots of money in terms of improving parks. The reimbursement, real quick. The reimbursement about Fox Ridge Sidewalk and the Operation Green Light. Can you tell us like a little bit more in depth about that, just if you don't mind? Just where's it coming from? Who's the reimbursement coming from? When does the reimbursement take place? Is that reimbursement thrown back into the funds? And I see it obviously for presentation and for budgeting purposes, you have to account for new fresh money every year. But just elaborate on that if you can, please.
From a funding standpoint, and then I want to hand it over to Mr. Krass to kind of answer exactly where that money's coming from. From a funding standpoint, we had to show that we were going to fully fund this program and this project in order to apply for the grant through Mid-America Regional Council. It is an 80-20 split, I believe, and so we had anticipated being reimbursed 80% of the project as we make progress on the project. And so as we make payments out, we get the reimbursement back. And at the end, we'll be making a budget amendment to essentially take that reimbursed funds and either apply it to another project or leave it in the CIP for the next year as we start building new projects. The money is coming from,
Actually, federal dollars that are allocated to the Kansas City metro area and then distributed through the Mid-America Regional Council.
Okay, so we'd be refunded, I think you said, or not refunded, but reimbursed 80%?
80%, that's correct.
Okay, all right, interesting, okay.
Other questions? I'll slip in a couple. So these are not in any particular order and not necessarily intended as criticism, but just a couple of things kind of jumped out at me. So printed copy, page 12, the projects by funding source. One thing that jumped out at me was from the BURP fund, City Hall sidewalk and curb repair, and this is FY20, $100,000 going there, and then kind of right down below it, transportation sales tax fund, annual curb replacement program, $400,000. And of course that actually goes on year after year, but it kind of startled me, I guess, to see that we were spending 25% of what we're spending on curb replacement program for just the work here at City Hall. And frankly, to be honest, I didn't actually walk around. I know there were some photographs and that photograph of the area by the dumpsters clearly, but it just, that jumped out at me that it seemed like we were spending a large amount on City Hall and curb repair. And I guess, Mr. Crass, as best you can, that's a one-time repair and should last us a while?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to add, it's not just curb within the parking lots here at City Hall. That includes the sidewalks as well as concrete work on the front patio, the replacement of that stamped concrete that's around the flagpole that typically becomes very icy and dangerous during the winter. There's a considerable amount of concrete as we did the front entry repair that we realized needed to also be removed. And that includes parts of that ADA ramp between the tower and the building as well as the stairs themselves. And so there's, beyond curb, there's a considerable amount of other items around just the municipal circle that's going to be replaced as part of that.
A lot more to it than that one tagline.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I flipped the page the wrong way, but back one page, page 11. I think I had a question. So this was funding source summary, line item 37, excise tax fund, and for fiscal 20, it's $1,140,000, and then for the out years, it drops back to $200,000 for each of the next 4 years. And that just jumped out at me and prompted a question. How is that excise tax funding line so much larger for fiscal 20?
Currently in the fiscal 20, we have 5 projects that we have scheduled, and currently there are no out projects scheduled aside from the maintenance of thoroughfare routes. And so in that funding source summary, what you're looking at is the expenditure as currently planned. If I'm looking at that same page on page 11, so that excise tax fund, we are anticipating the 1.14. That'll include curb replacement, street preservation, right-of-way infrastructure, the Fox Ridge sidewalk, Operation Greenlight, as well as the 58 highway access modification. But in out years 21, 22, 3, and 4, the only project we have programmed in that excise tax fund is that maintenance of thoroughfare routes.
Yeah, Commissioner, on page 10,
Excuse me, go
on
ahead.
page 10, the page right before it, it gives kind of a breakdown of
Right.
the extra projects for fiscal year 20 compared to the remaining.
And I see that, and I see the line, so maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but funding source, so this is pointing to money that we have or money that's coming in, true?
The page 11?
Yeah,
Page 11 is merely showing the, kind of the subtotal expenditure by its individual source. So, kind of a good example is the BURP fund we show in FY '20, we're spending
Right.
178,000, and then we have nothing planned currently. We will be making those assessments and currently have a facility-wide assessment going on to build some of those projects out. But those blank areas just indicate that there's no projects currently planned in those future
okay, but
future
the BURP
years.
fund will have money in out years.
Correct.
It's just not allocated yet.
We don't know what it is.
Right, okay, no, that makes sense, that's fine. Jumping clear back, so I don't know if we have different page numbering on the computer than we do on the paper copy, but printed copy, page 125, let's see, projects by category and department, so this is identified future needs, unfunded. Sorry, made you grab for the buck.
I was prepared if necessary.
That's good. Identified future needs, unfunded, and I think Commissioner Wiggins was touching on this a bit before. So there may be a little bit more detail on following pages, but in fiscal '22, planned 58 highway beautification west, and to the tune of 1.395 million, which struck me as a lot of money. So I know we have plans to shift access from Kentucky Road to 58. There's a traffic study going on there. There's obviously it's not just one isolated thing. And I'm trying to scan ahead here and see if I,
Page 140 is the.
yeah, thank you. I'm running out of pages here quickly. So it just, it really left me kind of wanting more detail. Improved streetscape of 58 highway corridor through beautification efforts, but I realize this is fiscal '22, so we're gonna see this several times more before it gets funded, but wondered if you could just provide a little bit more detail on what was envisioned for that. Yeah, page 140, thanks.
What page did you say, 140 what?
Printed, yeah, the detail is on printed page 140.
Gotcha, okay.
I started, it jumped out at me on page 125.
Sure. And the discussion that revolved around this project and what we use some of the unfunded but future identified needs is really to allow the CIP committee to come up with, really to reach for those big goals, to come up with ideas and projects that are really going to push forward some kind of great projects, and one of those being this 58 highway beautification, looking at medians, streetscapes, some ideas that would really bolster the look, feel, and also safety, most importantly, of 58 highway as a whole. And so while we know that you're looking at it as an unfunded project and you look at it, there may be a little sticker shock to it, there are a lot of other areas that we're looking at for funding rather than just in one fund. This, it could even be something that we would tie to a development or something that we would see
Well,
coming
right.
from economic development itself.
That always seems to be a very good approach, but you don't always have it available when you need it.
Sure.
So, yeah, I would say, the sculpture there, the wind sculpture, I enjoy that. I think that helps in many years past, and I'm going back, Mr. Gress, I'm sure I'm going back before your time, but in many years past, there was comment made that one of the problems with Raymore is you don't know when you've arrived, you don't know when you've left, and particularly on the west side of 58 where the city limits jog, You know, I agree. And I'm trying to remember, and this may not seem terribly relevant, but I can picture Pleasanton, California. I think that's where I'm thinking, but it's not the entire city, but they've got an area not too far from one of the freeways, probably the 580. And each of 4 accesses have these massive flying arches and all. And you very clearly know when you've arrived. I mean, it's very obvious. Sedalia, Missouri, when you're going through Sedalia East on Highway 50, you get to Ohio Street, which is the main drag downtown, the old downtown, and they've got an archway there. City of Grandview now, and Grandview, Maine. I just, you know, I'm just throwing those out as, I guess that's a little of what this made me think of, and I'm sure we haven't really gotten the plans that firm yet, but does that sound like a little bit of what you all have discussed?
It does, and as the staff liaison to the Arts Commission, I
Oh,
can
yeah.
say they are having the exact same conversations about beautification, artwork. Most of their conversations tend more towards like what we have at the corner of 58 and Dean. But what I've sort of likened this to is kind of a chicken and egg situation. You know, which one's going to come first, the project itself or the development that will help support that project? We on staff side, we want to be ready. We want to have the projects at least identified, scoped out to a certain extent, and a price evaluated so that we know what we're getting into as we move forward and say beautification is important to us moving forward. We've done our homework at least before we really get into it.
Right, I think things like that help to sell Raymore.
Absolutely.
I'll look forward to some more detail next year.
Fantastic.
Other commissioners, questions, comments for Mr. Eke? Yeah, Commissioner Urquia.
I noticed on page 128 of the printed packet, the soccer venue.
Big.
But I also noticed the location to be determined. I was curious where you were looking or considering, or where there might be 80 acres of land.
Anywhere we can acquire 80
Right.
acres of land at a
Right.
reasonable cost.
Sure, and I'm thinking here and around Raymore, if you guys have started looking or thinking, or if you have some areas kind of in your
our-
back pocket.
I know the park board and our Parks and Recreation Director, Nathan Mustine, are always looking for opportunities to find viable parkland that not only could serve that purpose, but then could also serve as another active park, much like we have at Recreation Park. But land is, land is always going to come at a price.
Sure.
Right, and I'm sure that if you told us where, that price would suddenly jump. So I'm hoping I don't get a real definitive answer just yet until we've got a contract signed.
Well, my end wasn't necessarily the price so much as general idea of locations. Well,
Sure.
just in general, where they were thinking 80 acres around Raymore.
Right, I was gonna suggest, I mean, when I think about it, the Madison Creek subdivision is 80 acres, Madison Valley subdivision is 80 acres. Those are large tracts. I don't know how many of those are left in Raymore, and particularly not in locations that already have a lot of development. They're probably cheaper or more likely to find them on the outskirts, but then you've got the issue of getting there, right? Your
Well, I
comment.
mean, like, I'm just, back in my mind, I'm thinking, east of the development we were looking at off of Dean, when we extend Dean down south, but to the east. But I don't know if that's a residential area or what that's, the thought is for that. But I was just trying to think where you'd find 80 acres, to your point, nearby.
Right,
Well, and on that, who's to say that,
Wiggins,
an outside, private entity wouldn't come in and do something
possibility.
in an area like North Cass and Dean and do a massive development that included entertainment and soccer and all that, so.
Oh, no, for sure. I'm getting excited, but I'm also trying to think where we have 80 acres.
All right. I have still not opened the public hearing on this case yet. I can do that. We can let Yeah, Commissioner Boyd, did you have something before we let?
No, I was just noticing the large amount of people
Okay,
we have out here
right,
in the
no,
crowd
I-
today. It just seems a little
I
different.
think this is gonna go short and sweet. I just wanted to make sure that we had most questions answered for the moment, so, I'll open the public hearing on case 19020, the fiscal year 2020 through 2024 capital improvement program. Anyone wishing to speak on this case could come forward to the podium. And, okay, the block has disappeared. I know, but I don't want to break the table. All right, Mr. Grass, you have an assignment, find the block.
Put that on the
Someone's-
capital improvement.
Someone's taken it for a souvenir, so close the public hearing. Any other questions for Mr. Icky before we take a vote on this case?
Can I make a motion to approve?
How do we, so this is a motion to recommend approval to city council?
Yes, sir.
That sound right?
Sir.
Okay,
Sure. I make a motion that we approve case number 19020, fiscal year 2020 through 2024 capital improvement program, and recommend approval to go next to city council.
I'll second.
all right. That sound like a legal motion to you, Mr. Grass?
I believe so.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Bowie, second by Commissioner Peterman to recommend approval of case 19020, fiscal 2020 through 2024 capital improvement program. And, I don't know, pass that recommendation on to city council. Sound good enough? All right. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 7. Got 7 in favor. None opposed, no abstentions. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Moving right along. Mr. Grass, you're about the, well, I was going to say you're about the only one here that could give us a city council report this evening, so how about it? Are you in a position to do that?
Sure thing. In
Thank
the
you.
absence of Mr. Zur, I hope I can fill his shoes here with a city or council report for you all. The only 2 items that I really have to report on stem from the meeting that the commission had on August 20th, which was the vacation or proposed vacation of 2 remnant pieces of right-of-way along Hampton Drive in the Remington subdivision, as well as the requested PUD and rezoning approval for the 25 acres of land the northeast corner of North Gas Parkway and Dean Avenue. At the August 26th meeting of the City Council, they did recommend unanimously 8-0 to recommend approval of the first reading for the vacation of those remnant pieces of right-of-way in the Remington subdivision, and voted 7-1 to approve on first reading the rezoning of the 25 acres of land there at the northeast corner of Dean and North Gas Parkway from the existing agricultural classification to a PUD. Both those items will go forward to City Council for second reading next Monday, September 9th, for their final consideration. At this time, I believe that would conclude City Council report.
All right, thank you. While you're on a roll, would you like to continue on to staff report?
Yes, I will. You'll notice in your packet, currently for our next meeting scheduled for September 17th, staff does not have any items at this time that are ready to move forward for the forward to the commission for review. So at the discretion of the chair, staff would recommend cancellation of the September 17th meeting of the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm. If we don't have any business, I don't see much point in getting together. I always hate to leave too much of a gap. We forget what we're doing sometimes, but yeah. Everybody okay with canceling September 19th, and then our next meeting will be October the,
I believe October 5th.
okay. All right. And we're still open on that, right?
At this point, yes, sir. October 1st?
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the only item that I wanted to get on your radars, at least, it's a couple months out still, but the annual joint work session with the City Council is typically held the first meeting in November. We've currently scheduled that for November 4th, 6 o'clock p.m. We'll actually hold it in the Centerview community space right across the street. Mr. Matt Tapp, over the last several months, has been working with a consulting group to hold an informative presentation relative to the specifics, a little more the, I guess, the nitty-gritty details of economic development and some of the work that he's been doing over the past several months. And so with the City Council as well as the TIF Commission, they'll receive an invite to it as well. We'd like to hold a joint work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission that evening of November 4th.
That's a Tuesday?
That'll actually be a Monday.
Okay,
The
thank
joint work sessions previously have been held on Mondays
Okay.
as a work session with the City Council. So again, that'll be at 6 o'clock at Centerview. Dinner will be provided since it is an evening meeting with a presentation that could take a couple hours depending on the discussion that takes place. So I wanted to get that on your calendar so you had a chance to clear the date if you hadn't already.
Right.
And of course, if you by chance can't make it, please let me know so that I can make those accommodation arrangements beforehand.
Sure.
And that this evening, sir.
Okay. Anything to add for engineering? I take it no. Commissioner,
Can I ask a quick question?
yeah, Commissioner Bowie.
Two quick questions.
Sure.
Additional building activity, construction work has been completed on the shelter, boardwalk, and amphitheater at Hawk Ridge. This is first question. When is that scheduled to be completed, and how big is that venue? What type of attractions do you have that information?
I know a little bit about it. I can get the more specifics from Mr. Rokos or Mr. Crass. I do know just in the last week or so, the ribbon cutting for Hawk Ridge Park was held with the park board at the completion of the boardwalk, the amphitheater, the pavilion, all the amenities that are included at Hawk Ridge Park. And I believe to date, everything is complete right now and is open for use, including the lake. As far as the specific size of the pavilion, I don't know that off the top of my head, as far as how many residents can be accommodated for any type of event that would be held there.
Outdoor concerts or something?
Yes, but it is capable of hosting an outdoor concert or some outdoor performance
Okay.
on that stage. I think potentially multiple based on the size of it. But if you want the specifics, I'd be more than happy to get those from Mr. Rokos.
I'm just curious if it's, Elton John? or
No.
is it,
No, it would be like, maybe some local bands. It's not anywhere near large
Gotcha.
enough.
Okay, just
for
making sure. Question 2.
A family reunion,
Okay, I got you. Big family reunion.
theater in the park maybe, but yeah.
Okay. Second question, on the code enforcement activity, all the activity seems to be, and call me a nerd, but I look at some of this stuff. Code enforcement activity seems to be down year to date and overall from 2018. Is that a reflection of loss of staff? I mean, what is that a reflection of necessarily?
So we've had this year the replacement of one of our code enforcement officers that went on to obtain a new job. That individual started about 4 months ago, I believe. And I believe the numbers you're seeing here are the cases that are open, and that's a reflection of actually increased activity by that individual. The numbers that he reports have to do with the citations that are sent out. And I believe that Mr. Vogel, our newest code enforcement officer, has a very unique skill of being able to address situations without having to send notices on a lot of occasions. So verbal contact, addressing those situations before the necessity of a citation gets to that point. And so it might look like there's a lot of activity that he's not doing, but I can tell you I see that individual about 8 o'clock in the morning when he gets here, and about 4:30 when he pulls back in the parking lot to head home for the day. So he's out and about quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense. Yeah, Commissioner Wiggins.
Thank you. Staying on kind of that general area, building activity, any update on the lofts? I know Mr. Eki referenced it, but I think at some of our previous meetings, they talked about, it was a wet spring, we'll be moving dirt anytime it dries out. Well, this is, we're hitting fall and almost into winter. No dirt has moved. Where are we at?
So a lot of the delays with that project had to do with the ability of the property owner, the current property owner, to close on the property. They were delayed about a month in doing that, which is why you didn't see a lot of construction activity on the site. We have received final plans and approved the final plans for the grading, public improvements, that aspect of the project, and they've just recently finalized their schedule of fees that they'll be required to pay before they can obtain the permits to do that work. I've been talking with our building official. I believe he would expect actual building plans for the buildings themselves sometimes within the next 2 months. There is a significant amount of grading and earthwork that has to take place on that property to install those facilities in order to make those buildings go vertical. But that project is moving along just at a slower pace than we had originally anticipated.
Okay, thank you. And kind of sticking on that, two ones that I didn't know if there was an update on anything. I know we had, talked about the industrial park out south, and we had done some stuff, and then that kind of got quiet. And then also the Conway project right out here that is on hold. Just didn't know if there's any updates on either of those items that are kind of on the back burner and where we might anticipate something else from them.
Sure. At this point, both those projects are still viable projects. They both have been placed on hold at the request of the applicant for different reasons based on the project. I would expect sooner than later you can expect to see the Conway project come back to the commission for consideration. Again, there were some complications with the previous property owner between the prospective buyers as well, and sorting out some legal issues that were tied to that property. But I would expect here within the next month or so to see that request before you again. And same with the Van Trust project, again, placed on hold by the applicant at their request to further evaluate the site and look into some more of the details of that project before it made its way to City Council. You could probably expect to see that again within the next several months to appear back before the City Council for their consideration.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments for staff on the staff report? All right. Time for public comment. I'll open the floor. Seeing no one, we'll move on to commission member comment. And, I think if you don't mind, we'll just start at my right-hand side there with Commissioner Bowie.
No comment. Thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Peterman, I should say Secretary Peterman, thank you very much
No
for
comments, thank you.
volunteering to take that role. Yeah, Commissioner Armstrong,
Just thanks for all your work.
Commissioner Wiggins.
Thank you, city staff. Again, my apologies. I know I emailed you all, but for anybody that watched this, apologies for missing the last meeting. Unfortunately, one of my friend's father just passed away, so I was at his funeral in Texas.
Yep, understood. Vice Chair Pfizer.
Yeah, I would also like to thank staff, and other than that, no comment.
All right, Commissioner Arkia.
Like Commissioner Wiggins, apologize for my absence. I don't have a good excuse other than back to Chair Faulkner's comment on missing too many, having too many meetings with nothing to do, and you forget what day of the month it is. But I apologize for my absence the last meeting, and as always, and heck of a job tonight holding your own without your usual support team.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, but thank you to staff. Thank you for covering very nicely for Mr. Fearborn. I hope he's feeling better. And I know you all work on this. This is pretty much of a team effort. And I'd like to thank Mr. Crass for being here as well. I think that's about all I've got. A quick reminder, we're canceling September 17th, and our next meeting will be the first Tuesday of October. So I don't have anything else. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn this evening's meeting.
I'll second.
Is that you? Thanks. Motion by Commissioner Wiggins, second by Commissioner Arkia to adjourn tonight's meeting. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. And amazing, it's unanimous. 7 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you all.